So I am a dreamer, which probably sounds a little pathetic, right? Coming from a short, bald, 46-year-old guy. But it's true, and anybody who knows me well will tell you that my life has been one long series of dreams, some of them fulfilled. And I'd like to tell you the story of one of these dreams. So back in 1993, I had the idea of writing a newsletter, a summary of the news with other people. And this is when I was a philosophy graduate student. And basically, I pitched it to Ross Perot by mail, which was kind of a silly thing to do. I suppose I didn't really know anything about the business world at the time. Didn't get a response. But anyway, that's the origin of the idea that I want to tell you about today. So then in 1998, I had another project that I started, which was to summarize the news about the Millennium Bug. And one of the people who read the site and followed it was Jimmy Wales. And I met him. We worked on each other's online groups since the mid-1990s. He started one that I joined, and he joined one that I started. And so he thought that the Millennium Bug, there wouldn't be anything to come out of that. And I wasn't sure. I was pretty, skeptical. And, well, he turned out to be right. So it was a dud. And so around the January of 2000, I was wondering what I was going to do with this website. So I thought, okay, perhaps I would go back to the idea of a news summary site, but I would do it differently. I would invite other people to help me, a lot of other people, and we would work collaboratively on summaries about all kinds of different news. And I shared this idea in good lean startup fashion with lots of acquaintances, loose acquaintances and friends. And one of these people was Jimmy Wales. And he said, well, you know, that's nice, but maybe instead of working on that, you could come and work on this free community-built encyclopedia instead, which I call Newpedia. I bought the domain name. I want it to be what is now called Pure Production, and I want it to be free and run according to open source principles. So I thought this was a dream come true, really, and it was right up my alley. So I found myself on the way to beautiful San Diego, California. And on the way there, I became completely convinced that this is possible. I had made the dream my own. And so I went to work for Jimbo's company called Bombus, and they had various side projects that they started. And so it was my job to begin a free encyclopedia, which is a very tall order, isn't it? Especially if it's going to be built by volunteers. But I really believed that it was possible. I believed it was possible because I knew through my experience, again, from about the middle of the 1990s, how people come together and they can build things just because of their own passions. They just love working together on things like tutorials and talking about philosophy and all kinds of things, right? And what could be more interesting to online eggheads than an encyclopedia? So I figured there just has to be a way. All we have to do is figure out how to do it. And that was the big question. So, in classic fashion, we had to throw away our first draft, which was Nupedia, because it was too slow. We had a 7-step editorial process, much too complicated. We only generated like 24 articles, so we wanted to come up with a way to get more content coming into the system. And so one fateful evening, January 2nd, 2001, I was having dinner with a friend of mine, Ben Kovitz, at a Mexican restaurant in Pacific Beach, California. And Ben was telling me about one of his geeky interests. I have a lot of geeky friends, which was wikis. And I'd never heard of wikis before. Collaborative pages in which people can edit each other's work. And the more he talked about it, the more I thought, geez, maybe something like this could actually be used to solve the problem that we were having with Nupedia. And so I spoke up. I said, well, just that. And so we sort of debated about that. And Ben later said that he deliberately talked about wikis in order to insert this idea in my head of a wiki encyclopedia. And I don't begrudge him if that was what he was trying to do. I don't begrudge him that. I'm actually very thankful. I was initially skeptical, right, of the idea. But I asked a lot of questions. And after a couple of hours, I had become convinced that it was worth a try without ever having seen a wiki. And so I asked Jimmy Wales to see to it that a wiki be installed. It was free, it already existed, and easy to install. So in a day or two, a wiki was set up, and I started working on it. So that's the origin story, right? And I've told it many times before, but maybe you hadn't heard it. The idea, initially, is obviously not the most important thing. It's the execution of the idea, obviously. So in that first year, in the first 14 months of Wikipedia, I monitored the recent changes page. I gave people advice and thanked them for their contributions. I welcomed them to the site. I formulated a lot of the original policy. I did a lot of the sort of PR work. And so forth. And as a result, our growth curve was exponential in terms of numbers of articles. But just as this was happening, there was a crash of the .com boom, which had fueled the ad growth that funded my position, right? And so I found myself without a job. And so I went back to the old idea that began with Ross Pro and that I shared with Jimbo back in 2000. I taught myself the programming language Perl, because I thought maybe being a programmer would be fun. And I made a prototype of a website that would do just what I was saying, that allow people to create accounts and come together and write different summaries. And so I was excited about this idea, but it turned out to be too big of a software project for a beginning programmer to take on. So I sort of, dropped that. And then I'm going to skip over the next several years because it's not totally relevant to the story of Infobitt, but I worked on a series of nonprofit reference and educational projects, including some that you see there: Citizendium, Watch No Learn, and Reading Bear. And then, just about 2 years ago, I returned to the idea, once again, of a collaborative news summary site, sort of reconceived a little bit as Wikipedia for news, sort of. So in order to explain this idea, what I want to do with you is try to give you the vision in a way that I hope will let you take it on board. Because it's very important to me that as many people as possible actually understand this vision and get on board with it. So, and you can understand it by analogy to Wikipedia itself. So think back to 1999, and you didn't know the answer to some question. You could ask a friend, you could do a web search, but that was often hit and miss back in 1999. If you really needed the information and you couldn't find it otherwise, you'd have to go to the library. It took a long time to come up with answers. Well, fast forward 14 years, 16 years. Wikipedia has made that practically instant, right? It's an enormous historical change, if I may say so, right? Never in history has there been a tool that allows everybody with an internet connection to come up with virtually instant answers. And what made that possible, right? What made it possible? What made it possible is an enormous community coming together, right? An enormous community that shared a vision of a free encyclopedia that they would all develop. It would be free because everyone is free to use it and everyone is free to contribute to it, so it has to be free. And enough people were excited enough by that idea that they actually did pool their efforts and they made it happen. It's amazing to me, it's still amazing to me just how much can be accomplished in terms of actually making information resources, not communicating, but information resources, if we pool our efforts. So, to sum that up, there is a human need for information, a problem. The problem is we weren't getting answers fast enough. And it's a global problem. Everybody had that problem, right? And it's a global solution that was needed to actually solve that problem. Everybody had to come together. It had to be a volunteer project. There was no company could pay enough writers to do Wikipedia. Here's another basic human need, or at least desire. We all want to know what is going on, right? That's why there is a flood of news out there. And we are practically drowning in sources of news. There's no shortage of things to learn about. In fact, one part of the problem is there's just much more out there that's of high quality that we actually are kicking ourselves because we don't have the time to read or even learn much about, right? You see these things coming on your feed, and geez, I wish I had time to read that. And that's only part of the problem, right? Because another part of the problem is the news is noisy. It's confusing. It's noisy in several different senses for different reasons. For example, facts are spread out across a bunch of different sources, facts about the same story, right? And yet those different sources, they also tend to repeat each other, which means if you want to glean all those facts, you have to wade through a lot of redundancy. So that's part of the problem. Another part of the problem is that in among all the headlines, there's a bunch of clickbait and misleading titles and sensationalism and all kinds of stuff that basically wastes your time when you are interested in the hard news. Now, of course, you can build businesses around time wasters. BuzzFeed has done this. And that's a good way to make money, I suppose. But it doesn't solve this problem of making us all as well informed, as efficiently as we can be, right? The New York Times, AP, ABC News, so forth, they don't have a motive. They don't have a financial motive to solve this problem. They also don't have the ability to solve this problem because, as I'll explain, it just is too big of a problem for an ordinary proprietary business to take on, right? But we do have the motive, right? All of us have the motive because we want to see the news made more efficient and organized. And we can actually do this if we were somehow properly organized. We would be able to do it. But the big question is how? That's the big question. Kind of like what I was asking myself back in 2000. How on earth can we organize everyone to catalog the world's knowledge, right? So now the problem is, how on earth can we organize everyone to make sense of the news? So think about what we want out of a news resource. Okay, we want all the facts about a story from the New York Times and Washington Post and AP and so forth. We want it all gathered together in one place, all the different facts. We want the facts summarized. We would like the summaries linked back to the source articles, right? And we would like all of those facts placed in rank order, which is roughly what you can see here. This is a bit. But we want that done not with just one story. We want this done for all stories, all the articles about all the stories. We want to reach into the long tail of tweets and blog posts and everything else. We want all of that stuff cataloged as part of the same system and placed, again, in ranked order and properly summarized. Right? And we want it. It's 2014, so we can imagine how all of this could be done, theoretically. It just seems like there's a way. We all know how Wikipedia works now. Seems like there's got to be a way. So, we have built a platform to execute this idea. We're on actually the second version of the platform. And we've iterated. We worked closely with beta testers. We started very lean. And we have recently soft launched. So we're no longer stealth. And just last Tuesday, I started talking publicly about the project. And this is actually the first public speech that I've given about Infobitt. So I can tell you a little bit about what we've learned in from our beta testing. It turns out that with just like 10 to 15 people working per week, different times, during the week, it turns out with just that small number of people, the quality is reasonably good, once a day at least, right? The evening edition, if you want to subscribe to our mailing list. That's what I put up once a day. But imagine if there were 10 times that people. That's still a small active user community, right? That's just like 100 to 150 people active per week, right? If we had that, I can practically guarantee you, I think it's highly probable based on our experience so far, that the news would be updated within an hour about any latest of the latest developments. It would be summarized quickly, and it would already, with that small number of people, be a great time saver, right? And then imagine if you had 1,000 people or 10,000. At that level, we would be able to do things that ordinary news organizations simply cannot do, right? We would be able to start having Wikipedia scale effects when it comes to the news. We'd be able to reach into the long tail. We'd allow citizen journalists scoops to actually percolate up in the way that they can't. Just for example, there's so many exciting things about this that could happen. So, to get from where we are, which is a partially closed beta, to a hard launch sometime next year, we're hiring coders now, so if you have any leads to some really good web coders, we'd like to hear from them. And I have started a 100,000 pledge drive. So what that means is I would like every one of you to go to the site. Please do this, by the way, and sign up. Well, you could sign up for the site, of course. Please do that. But if you don't want to do that, at least what you could do is say that when you, Larry, have organized 100,000 other pledges, then I will agree to come to the site and add just one fact. That means a sentence and a URL. That's all you're saying you'll do, right? Would you not want to do that if 100,000 other people had pledged to do that? Wouldn't that be fun? It'd be like an online party. So that's a little marketing idea that I had. I don't know if it'll work, but I think it will, actually. I have some experience doing this kind of thing, so I think it will. So to conclude, a lot of people said that Wikipedia was a ridiculous idea. It couldn't possibly work. We would be filled with a lot of nonsense, vandalism. Nobody would want to write encyclopedia articles, and certainly not for free. I mean, how can you expect people to want to do that? They were wrong. We had a lot of naysayers, and they were wrong, weren't they? Because people were inspired by the vision of everybody coming together and creating something that had never existed before, right? So in the same way, Infobitt is going to also have a lot of naysayers, but they'll be wrong too. I think we've already gathered enough experience and data to say that we can make a serious go at this. So I hope you all will join me, and if there's enough interest in a Greek language category, let me know and I will create one and can write in Greek bits. That would be excellent. And I hope to welcome you on the site soon. Thank you.